Welcome back to another episode of Accept, Then Achieve. I'm so honored to have our guest here today. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Dr. Richelle Vawter, and I'm in right now Phoenix, Arizona, and I am somebody that is really studying the spiritual path of enlightenment and awakening.
I love that. Oh my gosh. What has your journey been like? How did you get to what you're doing now?
Sure. So my story starts briefly in Las Vegas, Nevada. And during that time, I kind of grew up in the 80s, and my family was in the casino business, so we knew some interesting characters of the casino world. And that kind of shed light on the sense of how you need to have compassion and mercy for people. In regards to that, it really kind of shifted my belief system, and it allowed me a trajectory to start building on and finding more spiritual practices and working towards spiritual enlightenment, because it's always a progress. You're always enlightening. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Mhm.
it is always a journey. Yes.
Mhm. Mhm. And so basically from there, what kind of occurred was I went and I studied. I was in the movie industry for a little bit. So the last movies that I worked on was The Matrix 2 and 3. So it's kind of like I left clues for myself of where I was going. And
So
then
cool.
yeah, I decided to go into mental health counseling, because I felt like I wasn't dealing with enough personality disorders when I was in the movie industry. I was like, yeah, let me go ahead and do that. So from there, I became a counselor. And then I started working for homeless families. I moved up to Seattle, and it was one of the best times of my life. I had this fabulous team. We were an eclectic group of people, and we were going to homeless families, and we were assisting them into getting services, mental health services, housing, food, all kinds of things. And to me, it was really uplifting to be able to see this progress and to see the journey of these families. With that, I knew that there was something that was more, because there was a real lack of empowerment in regards to these families. And they were on a lot of pharmaceuticals, or they didn't feel like they were empowered.
hmm
So I actually then pursued a medical degree at Bashir University to become a naturopathic medical doctor. And my goal was to be able to bring integrative mental health care, nutrition, and all this wisdom that I was going to get, and bring it back to homeless families so that they could have like a better life. So I went to Bashir and I graduated from there. But after that, of course, like with student loans and things like that, it was a little bit more challenging to deal with homeless families. And I felt like I needed a break. I felt a bit burnt out.
hmm
Mm, so I started at that time studying Ayurveda. And I found Dr. Vasant Lad. If you don't know who he is, I highly recommend that you find out about him, because he is amazing. He brought Ayurveda from the West, to the West, and Ayurveda is the Indian medicine that's over 5,000 years old. And it's really basically talking about how you are a set of qualities. You are the universe incarnate. And with that, you need to balance out these qualities. And that is where true health lies. So I was able then to go to India and study with him, and study at some like Dr. Sodhi, some people that are really big in the Ayurvedic field. And I was really fortunate that I got to do it. It was right before COVID. And then what happened was I was like, well, I feel like I need something more here as well. And I actually found my teacher in Nepal, Mr. Upreti. And this is actually my tantric drum back here.
Wow.
Uh, I started to learn about Tantra, but not Tantra that we know about in the West, because in the West, we're a little bit unhealed when it comes to like our sexual prowess and the way that we look at sex. And so this is actually not about sex at all. This is about the union of the masculine and feminine, or the positive and the negative frequencies, and
Mhm.
that is actually how you build and you allow yourself to continue to grow in the spiritual realm. They um, they talk about things like with Bhairav and with Shiva, but it's something bigger. Like their whole thing is it's about nature, that we're all nature, and that nature is the expression. We are an expression of nature, and that what you're doing is you're finding frequencies that you're aligned to, and you have like your own mantra, your own frequency, and when you hit that, you're able to allow the energy to rise, to rise, to rise, to kind of come through. And that changed my life. So that is what I'm going to be bringing into more and more into this world, is the tantra. Mm, I've also been before, when I was there in Nepal, I started to learn a little bit more about psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. I was fortunate enough, before I went to Nepal, that I was able to have a lovely ayahuasca experience in Peru under Niue Rao.
Mhm.
Ricardo, he's not a doctor, Ricardo. He seems like a doctor with everything he talks about. So I had this experience there, and it was enlightening, and I'm happy I had that experience before I did Nepal, because it really kind of showed me how when you do psychedelics or when you do something, it's not about getting lost in visions. And this is kind of like my overall messaging, is that it's not about getting lost in visions. It's not even getting lost in the emotions. It's about understanding that you are the divine, that you are the consciousness, and that everything that is going on for you is just giving you bits and morsels of your internal world and where you need to go and what needs to rise out. And that when you work with like the medicines and with the psychedelics and things, that you are able then to control parts of your mind. And then from there, you're able to awaken that, because then you are actually then understanding more and more of the consciousness. It's the way that Maria Sabina, and I apologize if I'm butchering her name, the way that she did mushrooms. So when she would have the mushrooms, she would tell the people, you have to stay awake. You can't fall asleep, right? You have to be able to stay awake. It's the same thing with the ayahuasca. If you do ayahuasca, it's like, you don't allow the medicine to do you. You work in unison with the medicine, in unity. And then even in the tantra, you're working in the unity. You have the frequency, you have the energy, you have your mantra. You're becoming pinpoint focused. It's very beautiful.
Wow, what an
Yeah,
amazing journey.
thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have some questions that sprouted from that. What is your personal mantra then for your life and
Well,
for
the
consciousness?
key is that I can't give you my personal mantra because it's very personal and it's sacred. So when you take the initiation with like
Mhm.
a guru or a spiritual person that's been initiated, they give you that mantra, but you hold that mantra to yourself, because that's your frequency, that's your energy that you're working with, and nobody kind of gets that mantra, because every mantra is different, because
Mhm.
every person is a unique expression of the universe. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. And so
Mhm.
when you found your mantra, like did things absolutely shift, like click into place and just life got
Mhm.
easier after
It
that?
did. It really did, because it was really, like I would sit in this place, because lots of times people are like, "Oh, you're in this spiritual enlightenment. You're out in a field, and like, or you're under a tree," and it's like, "Oh no, like there I am in Kathmandu. I'm in this area where you've got like the sacred fire going. You got my teacher there, and he's helping me rise the energy a little bit, and then I feel the energy, and I'm like, this is incredible. I'm like, oh my God, you're so powerful. And my teacher said, and this is how like I knew he was the right teacher. He says to me, that is your energy. He goes, I'm only assisting a bit. And he goes, in life and in this field, he goes, you trust yourself. He goes, you trust no one else. And if someone else is trying to say that they know more than you know that they're not telling you the right way. You know,
Hmm.
and so there I would be like, in this like little dank area. We've got this sacred fire, he's got like sacred geometry going on, and there I am. Like I have some other colleagues, and I'm like sitting there for like hours, and you're doing this mantra, getting yourself into pinpoint focus. And I'm like, it doesn't look like or appear aesthetically pleasing per se. But man, when you start doing that work and that energy starts to rise, you start to feel that heat, and you know it, and you feel calm and energy and presence, and an intuition that you can't even possibly imagine. You got the right way. It's pretty powerful. Yeah. Hmm.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
cool. And does
Yeah.
that last afterwards? You were like, oh, my intuition was strengthened afterward.
Totally. Yeah, because you really get like much more of a connection. It's starting to, awaken And what I should really say is that when we say awaken, and I'm putting it in more of terms because I like to bridge the spiritual component as well as the scientific. When you're talking about like that awakening and that energy, ultimately what you're talking about is really kind of like that nervous system. You're becoming very balanced, like a complete balance within the nervous system, right? That nervous system, once it's extremely balanced, right, it's able to really kind of make sure that everything else is feeling balanced. And when you have that kind of balance, then you're able to kind of lift up here, and you can start to feel heat and things up here. It's very, very amazing, and it's subtle and it's strong, and you have to become prepared for it. So it's not something that you're doing and you're like, I'm just going to do this lightly. Like, you work it, your body starts to become more and more prepared, because the majority of us, and I know that you know, being in the medical field will understand this, we are in mostly the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Definitely.
And when you start to do this, like my teacher says, it's like the energy's the energy. And as many, many teachers have said, is,
Mhm.
where the thought goes, the energy's going to go.
Mhm.
So the more that you control the thought, and you're understanding that, sometimes things come in through the ego, things are coming in through television, culture, all of these things that are really clouding us, right? That as that veil starts to unlift, you have to become more and more prepared for it, because then the questions and the things that start to come up, like, who am I? What is really reality? What is really going on here? All of these things start to come up. Some people, if they're not prepared for it or it goes too fast, can go along the lines of psychosis, right?
Mhm.
They have a break, they're not able to really deal with it, they don't know how to deal with it. So all of these practices that you're doing, it prepares you to do that. You're sitting there, you're conscious. You being more conscious, you know that wherever the energy is, that you can handle that energy. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, so kind of building the self-trust and really
Mhm.
seeing yourself
Mhm.
and being able to better understand your essence, like
Mhm.
your piece of
Yeah.
consciousness. Yeah.
Totally. And for me, like, I've had like visions and things where I've had seen the sacred geometry and these sacred patterns,
Mhm.
which is really for me very beautiful. But and you also have to just realize that you never get lost in the visions, because the visions will come and go. It's about going through everything, and then there is that truth, whatever that truth is for you. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
Wow, that's really great. Another question I had from earlier, you said balancing the qualities. Could you
Mhm.
describe what some of those qualities are? Is it the masculine and feminine energies, or could you give
Sure,
examples?
sure. So in Ayurveda, they look at the universe is made up of almost like 20 qualities. Okay. And then they kind of divide those 20 qualities down to something called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha.
Hmm.
So in a nutshell, Vata is your ether and your air. Pitta is your fire and water, and Kapha is your earth and your water. Okay.
Hmm.
So for example, Vata is like air, it is space, it's light, it's cool, it's kind of like that free flowing, like you're kind of like in an airplane,
Hmm.
It's more clear. With that, the way that it would manifest, like as a human being, okay, is someone may be very extremely creative. They may be somebody that is a little bit thinner, right? Because it's just their makeup. It can be that some people that they kind of like talk in these tangents, like these are all kind of like Vata things. On an imbalance of Vata, okay, it can look like anxiety. It can look like a real nervousness. It can look like someone has like racing thoughts or flight of ideas. So that's Vata out of balance.
Hmm.
Okay. Then you have Pitta. Pitta is that fire and water. So Pitta is that metabolism in your body, right? So that metabolism, it's going to transform things. So Pitta people will be great leaders. They'll be great organizers. They're the people that it's like, they wake up in the morning and they've already completed everything by 9 a.m. And you're like, what? And then out of balance, Pitta can be very judgy. It can be very opinionated. It can want to control things. That's out of balance, Pitta. And then kappa is that earth and water. So it is kind of like dense. It would be like cold. It would be sluggish. Like these are some of the qualities of kappa, right? Now,
Mhm.
in balance, for a person, kappa is connectivity. Kappa is compassion. Kappa is like the sense of like that belonging. Like you met people and they give you that sense of warmth and belonging. That would
Mm.
be like a kappa in balance. Kappa out of balance would be someone that's extremely depressed, who is suffering from obesity, might have hypothyroidism. All of these things are kappa out of balance. So in Ayurveda, you're always supposed to be balancing these. This is about overall health, which goes into my other topic as I was talking to you before. It's the idea of wealth.
Mhm.
So the idea of wealth is that we are balanced, that we have good health, that we are able to live a life where we're able to balance our vata pitta kappa,
Mhm.
mm, that we are able to have community and we're able to have these connections, and that we're able to be free of a lot of the constraints of what's going on from a social construct. And so and money can come along with it, but it's not the focus, because if you focus and try to chase money, it always becomes kind of elusive. It's like, oh, I might get you here, or I might even have a big sum of money, but then I have to keep it. And if you think that you have to keep money, then that becomes consuming for you, and that takes you out of a place of health. It's the
Mhm.
flexibility, and that is like really the key, right? Because the universe is bendy and slippery and all kinds of wonderful things, it's the mystery, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point you made about true wealth. It's like
Mhm.
so many things. And I
Mhm.
think so many, especially we're both from America, so it's
Yeah.
just like the chasing of money, but the sacrifice and expense of your health and your
Mhm.
freedom to
Mhm.
and so many things, and you miss out on time with your family or able to nurture your relationships. It throws everything into balance. Yet we're just conditioned, as you said, by
Mhm.
all of the media out there
Mhm.
that you have to do more and do this, and it's
Mhm.
yeah, I think you
Yeah.
make such a great point. And how do people access that? Because I know so many of us have money wounds or
Mhm.
hoarding money or being or not trusting it or being resentful or love hate. I know I've had to work through that and still am with myself, but just
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
thoughts or maybe even practical tips for our audience.
Sure. So
Uh,
one of the things is it's looking inside of yourself, right? Because some of the things that happens with money and when we chase money is that sometimes there are thoughts that come with it. Like, I need to have this money to feel important. I'm not saying that everyone's having these thoughts. I'm just saying some of the time. I
mhm,
need the money to have important, or I can't keep up with somebody else, and I need to make sure that I keep up with them, right? Or look at the amazing life that they're living, and I'm not living any kind of amazing life, right? It's the
mhm,
ideas that we have attached to the money, because that's coming from within us. That's some kind of insecurity that we're having. There's some kind of a cultural piece that says, oh, you have to have a certain amount of money to be an achiever, these things. And when you start to look within yourself and you start to heal those insecurities, or you start to realize that you're worth it, because lots of times what happens, people don't think that they're also worth money, and they don't know what to do with money. And so then it's like, oh, I'm not worth it. But that person, they're worth it because they have money, right? Like they
mhm,
understand that. And then you put somebody up on a pedestal that doesn't need to be up on a pedestal.
mhm,
So it's really about taking in and knowing who you are, and then constantly like doing that internal work, and then being able to say, I can let that go. I can sit with that. I can be here. I can have this wealth. I can be this success in all these different fields and all these different realms. And then I have like really arrived for myself, and I have a level of consciousness that's been building and building, that takes me to another life, that takes me to another dimension, takes me through a
mhm.
portal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
that sounds
Yeah.
beautiful. And it sounds like that's something we can do even in the present moment at any time, regardless of our external circumstances.
Absolutely. And the thing is, though, you can do things, you can do breathing exercises where it kind of helps modulate the nervous system, a bit, biofeedback. Joe Dispenza does a lot of these different things. You can also do this sense of, I'm going to be practically right here. Like, how many people are not in the moment? We're not in the moment. We live in a future, or we live in a perceived future of what we think is going to happen. But I'm talking
Mhm.
about truly being in a moment. Like, even you and I being right here on this call, we've already had a gamut of emotions that we probably don't even identify right now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like the more that you're able to, like, okay, I have this sensation, I'm having this feeling, I'm having the moment, the more that you do this, the more you're able to have your internal experience, which is becomes the external experience. And it's very beautiful. And the other thing is having some kind of a sacredness. And I don't mean that you have to like believe in Christianity or, Islam, nothing. I'm saying that what's your sacredness? What kind of a ritual do you have for yourself? Whether it be I wake up in the morning and say I am gorgeous, or go for a swim or you go for a walk. Like, what's your time of sacredness? And to take that time of sacredness. Take a moment, and then really allow yourself to feel what's going on, like in the energy, like the moon, the sun. Like, how many times do we go outside in the sun and we're like, oh my God, we're so hot, right? Or we're starting to sweat. But how many times do we really stop and we're feeling all of the rays on the sun on our face and our body, and every moment that leads up to us sweating to death? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I found, I guess I've been doing that.
Hmm.
I really
Yeah.
love the sun. I just love basking in it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
so lovely. Some
Yeah.
of the listeners might not be spiritual at all.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
just curious what you would say to them or how to encourage them to explore or if they're curious at all.
Sure. So I would go with the same thing. It's that if you're not really spiritual, I would go with, there's the scientific portion of it, you're looking at the nervous system. Like, one of the big things for me is nutritional psychiatry. So what it is that, you're looking about how food is going to be affecting your neurotransmitters, how it's affecting your gut health, how that is affecting you. Inflammation is huge, right? And inflammation is a big blocker. It creates that sickness behavior, which is increases anxiety, depression. It can create, symptoms of OCD, all of these things, right? So I would say that you would start from like these kinds of things, right? Like, how is it that what kind of choices am I making for food? What kind of choices am I making that feel like they're health related and that gives me wealth? Where is it that I am, I'm seeing that I'm like, I can pray over my food. I have a sacredness over my food. How can I incorporate like balancing qualities? If I've got dry skin, it makes sense. I put a little bit of oil on there. You know what I mean? What qualities do I have that feel are out of balance? How do I start to balance those qualities? That's the beauty about this universe, right? It comes from
Mhm.
a multitude of places. You can look at things from a physical realm. You can look at it from a brain realm. You can look at it from, a spiritual realm. You have all these ways to be able to get to know you, and whatever it's going to speak to you. It's a beautiful thing. It's like at all times, who you are wants to connect with who you really are.
That's so true. Oh,
Mhm.
that's really
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're almost like your consciousness is just trying to get closer to you and yeah, just want to get to know each other.
Always, always. I
Yeah.
get very passionate about this, so I talk, and also I'm a Sicilian, so I talk with my hands and I keep talking,
Love it.
It's there,
Oh, it's so good. Your passion for this, yeah, just really comes through. I love it. Yeah, so I guess could you talk about if there were any like yeah, the turning points in your journey or dark moments and how did you cope through those? It sounds like your at least the career transition
Mhm,
has been really in
mhm.
alignment all the time. Was there a period of time when you felt yeah, like you were on the wrong path or just anything like that?
Sure. So what I can say, my family, once again, they're, very colorful people being in Vegas, and, I don't want to go into all these details about that. What I can say is that when you are surrounded, and let me put it to you this way, Las Vegas is very different place to live than the majority of places that you would live. It's really about embracing addiction. It's about embracing gambling. It's about embracing like drinking. Like it is about this, right? Because that's the core, at least when I was there, it was the strip, it's the casinos. You
Hmm.
know, there were many people that I knew, many friends that lost their houses because they would go in the middle of the night and they would sign over their house so they could get money to gamble. So they
Oh
would
my
lose
gosh.
everything. I mean, it's very frightening. It's a very dark kind of thing. I'm not saying that there's not good things about Vegas because with that, there's always a level of truth that you kind of have to keep, or it's always in your face. Many times in societies we want to put on happy faces, or we want to shun like a darkness that's there, and we want to
Hmm.
pretend like it doesn't exist, or when it does exist we want to go, well, that's not me, you know, like that's not who I am. That's But we all have these certain urges or cravings or things that come up, even if it's for a moment. I mean, anybody that has murdered a cockroach knows what it's like to want to kill something. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean you're
Hmm.
going to go kill a human. It just means that you understand that concept. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So in Vegas, there was always this going on, where you start to realize, like for me, it's a slippery slope. Like you could go down one path where money was very easy, things were very easy. You know, there was a level of respect that came because it came from fear. You know, that's
Hmm.
something that was definitely there. Or you could choose, for me, like kind of like this different path, which was, it's going to be much more of like more of a compassionate one. It's going to be more of, I'm going to be able to embrace people's fears and help them get through it, right? Like I'm not going to use fears against them. We're going to elevate. You know, that's kind of where I came from. I really love the entertainment industry because when I was little, it's like that's what I had, was looking at movies. And I always love the idea that you could be in a movie theater with somebody and you could have a collective experience, right? Like you go and you're all feeling joy at the same time, or you're feeling sad at the same time, you know, or, you know, this movie's moving you along, you know.
Hmm.
And I like that. And when I was in the movie industry, there was a really sense of family and community when you're on the set, because you're there for like 3, 4 months or something. You're all there together, you know,
Hmm.
and then, but then it breaks up. And then immediately, like, oh, you're either going on to another film, or, you know, you kind of try to stay with those people. And, you know, then maybe you're working on a film and you don't quite support like the message of the film, you know, it made me question what I was doing, when I was there, because I was like, well, I'm having fun, you know, but I'm like, you know, what am I supporting here? I'm supporting someone else's vision, and
Hmm.
it may not even be something that's going to be long lasting. Like I spent 3 to 4 months on a film, but I was like, to me, the message was like, it didn't mean anything, it had no purpose. It was like just for fluff. It was something for fun, right? So yeah, I was giving people enjoyment, but it's not something that they would remember. It's not something that was truly changing their life at that moment, you know? So I also didn't like the waste that was in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
Mm, and there's a lot of it, you know. It was very, it's very wealthy, and because, well, what I should say, it's a lot of money, not necessarily wealth. There's a
Hmm.
lot of
True.
money within it. And like when you would close off a film, sometimes they would throw out printers, or, you know, all these kinds of things. And I didn't like that too much. And then I was on this one set, and there was a homeless gentleman that was just sitting down. He wasn't bothering anybody. He wasn't trying to be a, you know, a star seeker. He literally just wanted a place to sit down. And the production manager was like, well, could you just go tell that person to move? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm like, I'm not going to tell that person to move. Like, they were not bothering us. They were not doing anything. Just because you didn't like the sight of him being there or being homeless, I wasn't going to do that. So
Hmm.
I needed to move forward and move on, which what got me into working with, you know, much more of the deep roots of the psychology, right? Like I always had like a feeling about that, but it really went deeper, going into, you know, becoming a counselor. And then like that really, it felt very fulfilling. I mean, I still do a lot of counseling now as well, and I really love it. So I have a focus right now on OCD, and I
Hmm.
find OCD to be extremely fascinating because it's a thought process, right? It's a maladaptive thought process. When you start to shift thoughts and things, you can start to shift some of those behaviors that are going on. So that's kind of interesting. And that kind of goes along with the idea of like spirituality and kind of like this sense of you're going within to come with, come out. Like it's a birthing, like you're birthing yourself to come back out into the world, So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's
Hmm.
beautiful.
Thank
Wow.
you. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, the movie, I mean, maybe The
Hmm.
Matrix was life-changing, though. You can't say for
Yeah.
some people, but I
Yeah.
know how you feel and just,
Mhm.
yeah, feeling like I want to do something that's more meaningful for the world, or at least something that's more aligned with your unique soul
Mhm.
print, your gifts and all of
Yeah.
that. So that's so great. You found and you love what you're
Mhm.
doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What
I f
were the most helpful research? I mean, it sounds like your spiritual teachers and spiritual gurus. I know you wanted to talk about spiritual luxury. I'm still a little confused about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So there's a term because I'm going much more into more of like the coaching, and I also do the Indian astrology, the Jyotish, right?
Mhm.
Because I do believe there's an alignment with the stars, and I do believe there's alignment with certain frequencies and energies at the time that you were born. So I really am into that. I'm not saying that it's like predestined, but I like to look at these things. So within this kind of coaching field, there's kind of a term called spiritual luxury. And it's fine to want money or to want to invest in money or be around people that have money to learn from them. Absolutely. Like that makes sense. And it might be in your destiny where you're like, I'm manifesting this money for myself and this is something that really speaks to me and I really want this. Sure. But when we're talking about like a spiritual luxury, and that you're like elevating some of the people that are like, oh, you can have this spiritual luxury and I am this spiritual guru, that is problematic, because luxury itself, and it can be depends on what luxury you're talking about. Like luxury might be I'm going to sit on an island and bask in the sun. It depends on like if what's your definition of luxury. But many of the definitions of luxury that I'm getting is like I can, afford the Louis Vuitton bag, or, I can go to Gucci and I can buy all this stuff and I'm still a spiritual guru. Well, I can tell you that from my studies, I've been to the mountains of Colombia, I've been to the Himalayas, I've been to China. Like these are people that are not caring about these things. And when you can see some of the things that they're doing with the energy and some of the things they're doing, and I can't necessarily talk about them, but they're not going to care about a Gucci bag or a Louis Vuitton bag. They're not saying for you not to do it, but they're saying like what it is your priorities, or what do you want. So when there are people that are like, I am spreading my wealth, and because I have so much to say and I'm so important, that's why I have money. That's not the right way to be going, because then
Hmm.
you're saying that there's a bunch of people out there that are really not seeking any of that kind of money, or not giving to this world. And I can tell you, I have been to where people are praying every single day for this world and for the people in it all day long. And to say that they're not like adding something to this world, that's ridiculous.
Hmm.
Um, so I want us just to, that would be like my message. It's to look at like what your definition of wealth is. And that's like something, a very good practice. What is your definition of wealth? What is your definition of luxury? And what are you chasing? So if you're chasing wealth, are you chasing money? Are you chasing travel? Like, what is it that you're chasing? And to know these things, and the more clear you are, it's just the way it goes. Like, the more clear that you are about things, the more that you're having a better understanding of who and what you are and where you're at, and the better that you can truly manifest things that are going to be much more in alignment for you. And that's the key. Because lots of times we may not even be in alignment to have like so much money, to have millions and millions and millions of dollars of money, but it feels like that's what we're supposed to be wanting. So it's really being clear about what these goals are, and these are the things that trip people up, because the truth of the matter is that the more that you chase something, the more elusive it becomes. You have to really want it, you have to really be able to own it, and you have to be able to sit in the space that you are, because when you're truly in the power of the now and you're here right now at this real moment, you have limitless potential. It's only when you start to act in making actions was where you're making a path, like in quantum evolution, that when an electron goes into an atom, okay, it finds and it goes through all of the multiple paths that it could go to get to the nucleus, right? To get there. And yet it chooses the path that has the least amount of energy that it's going to have to exhibit. Like that's what it does. So you have to look at those things. So if you're choosing something, you're like, I want money, I want money, I want money, but that doesn't really align with you. That's a lot more energy of you wanting the money rather than actually making the money. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. So just choose something that actually is aligned for you, that is easier
Mhm.
for you, rather than expending your energy unnecessarily.
Exactly. Exactly. And knowing in the power of right now that you have a limitless potential. Everything that we do is another choice, it's another dimension, it's another
Mm.
rung on a ladder. But also to understand that you, once you kind of start one path, yeah, you can go to another, but it doesn't mean that there's not consequences to another path. It's just the law of physics. Because I've been hearing a lot of people that are like, oh, you can escape karma. But karma is
No.
just, it's just the law of, action and reaction, like, that's all it is. And if you're truly outside of karma, then you're truly, like, out beyond whatever invented physics. And if you're out whatever invented physics, you're not gonna give a rat's ass about what's going on here. Do you see what I
Yes.
mean?
Wow. Thanks for
Yeah,
explaining that. We only have a
yeah.
couple minutes left. My final question is just any last words or thoughts or pieces of advice you want to share with the audience or your younger self, and how can people find you and connect with you? I'll put it all in the show notes, links as well.
Yeah. So, firstly, I just wanted to say, Tony, thank you for inviting me and making that connection. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing about really bringing in people and really having an audience and really making something very authentic. So, thank you for that. That's the first thing. The second thing is I would really say for people is to start to become very clear and doing that internal work of where and what they're worshiping and how come they're worshiping it. Like, what is their definition of wealth? What is their definition of luxury? What's even their definition of spirituality? It doesn't have to be aligned with a god. You know what I mean? It's like, what is their definition of their sacred? That would be some of the things. The other thing is that I would want to pass on something that my teacher said, which is that if any teacher says to you that you need them or you don't know more or you need to be able to look into yourself, then they're not the right teacher for you. If they create a dependency on them, they're not really
Mhm.
the right teacher. Okay.
Agreed.
And, the other thing is that, let's really look at, really what is wealth and how we can really expand that because we are in a day and age where sometimes we don't even know what's true. And the only thing that you're going to really know what's true is when you're really connected with yourself and in that present moment. And when you have that eternal and that limitless potential right here, right now, something beautiful. So thank you. um, and where you can find me through Koan Mind, Body, Spirit. That's the nonprofit that I am starting in Phoenix, which is going to be offering low income psychedelic assisted psychotherapy to veterans and to seniors. So you can find me through there. I love to have chats with people. I really like to help people get on their path of whatever their path is and to see that progress. It's something really beautiful. We rise together. Our thoughts, and our actions, it's all affecting each other. There's no separateness. We're together.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Mm,
much. Yes, and if you're just on your path, if you found your path, you found your way,
mhm,
you have the joy, you're just elevating the
mhm.
overall consciousness. That's so beautiful. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you
Mhm.
so much again
Thank
for
you.
today. And yeah, I'll put everything in the show notes. Have a
Okay.
great
Thank
one.
you.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
bye.